Welcome to today's episode of Freshly Grounded. And if you're a fan of the kind of content that we create, we would be super grateful if you considered joining us and supporting us on Patreon. Sign up at patreon.com/Freshly Grounded, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Sorry for blabbing. Enjoy. Good morning. And I say good morning because I'm filming this intro at my house in the morning, on the morning of the release of the podcast. In all of the excitement of doing the episode, I completely forgot I didn't even do the intro. So welcome to this week's episode of Freshly Grounded, episode 237. This episode is with two amazing guys. Sorry, I literally just had my breakfast. Two amazing guys, Abdul-Rahman and Tariq. They founded an app called Pillars. It's an amazing app. It's an app I actually came across before I came across these guys. And this is not a paid sponsored episode, although we do, talk about their app. It's more so from an intrigued level, an intriguing level from me. Just wanting to know how and why they started this app. Of course, we know that there was that huge scandal, if you'd call it that, of one of the largest Muslim apps last year. Kind of it coming out that our data was being sold and so on and so forth. And so these guys decided to create a Muslim-made, a privacy-focused, no ads, free app around the prayer times. And it's a really, really cool app, designed beautifully. And I really wanted to have a conversation with these guys for a while. So it's lovely to have both Abdul-Rahman and Tariq. And Tariq developed it, Abdul-Rahman designed it. These guys are uni students. And you get a really kind of like social network kind of vibe from these boys. It's really fun talking to them and really chopping it up. But like always, we ended up talking about all sorts of things and really didn't talk about the app too much at all. So I hope you enjoyed this episode 200. I'm sorry, because that's just disgusting, isn't it? It's disgusting. I'm on a professional podcast with 4 million monthly impressions, and I'm filming the intro from my bedroom and quite frankly burping through my breakfast. So I apologise to you loyal listeners who don't deserve such bad treatment, really. And with that, I'll just head straight into the episode. So enjoy this episode 237 with Abdul-Rahman and Tariq. Enjoy. And welcome to Freshly Grounded, the brand new podcast.
Well, it's not exactly brand new anymore, is it?
Welcome to Freshly Grounded, the podcast.
That's better.
Created by best friends Faisal and Sam.
Huh?
I said welcome to Freshly Grounded.
After that bit.
Created by
After that bit.
best friends Faisal and Sam.
Really?
We are on. Assalamu alaikum, guys. Those of you who are listening and watching, those of you who are watching on YouTube, do not adjust your TV sets. It is not Mo Salah in front of me right now. As much as it is almost an exact copy. That's Tariq and Abdul-Rahman that we have with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for spending some quality time with me in the studio, and also for doing it so last minute. I know we literally I put out a tweet last night. I was like, is anybody available at 1:30 and 5:30 or 5:30 tomorrow? And alhamdulillah, we had such a great response. I found out about some amazing people, but I had you guys in mind for a while. Your guys' like troops were pushing for this for a minute.
We actually found out from someone tagged us underneath your
really?
tweet. That's how we found out. Yeah.
I was getting messages saying, they mentioned
Yeah,
pillars.
and then we Tariq called me, and then we went from there.
Well, it's really weird because I've experienced that. I've been on the other side of that before as well, and it's actually weird because there's a balance with that, isn't there? I love psychology, and I love updating myself with the articles on Psychology Today. I don't know if you read that, but there's some great articles in there sometimes. And one of the things that psychologically is incredibly interesting is this idea of people when you seek something too loudly, it pushes the other person back. It gives you a bit of pushback, right? Yeah. Whereas I suppose what it does is it takes away the need, it takes away the desire, because you now know you can attain something so easily. Not saying that I could attain this podcast, but my point is that I've been on the side of trying to attain, for example, episodes, and you can understand why that psychology is so true. And if we look at like the typical psychology of like relationships and like this idea of what is it, not playing hard to get,
like neediness or something.
Yeah, I suppose playing hard to get is that, isn't it? When like you
this theory of if you act like you're not that interested, they'll be more interested in you.
it's
the same.
It's a fine
Right.
balance, right? Yeah, like you have to. You don't want to overstep, but if you don't ask, then it might not happen.
Yeah,
so,
there is definitely a balance.
I feel like I personally think that you should always like go for it.
Oh man, agreed.
Because if you don't, 9 times out of 10 you won't actually get it. But I do see what you're saying. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, have you guys heard of James Clear?
Yes,
Yeah.
Atomic Habits.
Atomic-
Yeah,
it's
it's such an amazing book. But I follow him on Instagram, and literally today, like, he posted this thing about, it was about like confidence and stuff like that, and he was saying that just having confidence doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get more opportunities or anything. But by not having confidence, you're setting your own bottleneck too low. You're setting your own ceiling. And I guess that's what it is. Like, you do need to ask.
Yeah.
I think asking's huge, man. I ask all the time. In fact, my teacher in school, he said to me, "You need to ask things less," right? But I'm very inquisitive, but also I'm a big proponent of asking people for things. Oftentimes, people don't get opportunities because the person who is in control of those opportunities has just literally never been asked. And so they've never that's not been posed to them, but the assumption is that you would not get that thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, it's counterintuitive, but it's like, say people at the top who, about like asking them. It's like the assumption is that they've been asked millions of times, but more often than not, it tends to be the case, that they haven't been asked, and everyone else has that same assumption that they've been asked, so they're not asking.
Another like a cool way to interact with people that you are trying to interact with but haven't been able to, because for example of like their notoriety, is by accessing people, and we found like a lot of success in this, is accessing people who they are very close to, who have almost no notoriety, right? And back in the early days, Omar actually did a design when Jay-Z announced Tidal. There was I can't remember if it was Tidal or if it was something else, but Omar had done a design back in the day that he wanted to get in front of. I don't even know if he'd be happy with me telling this, so I'm telling you now. He done a design that he wanted to get in the eyes of Jay-Z, in front of Jay-Z, and there's either trying to get through to Jay-Z directly, almost impossible, or finding out his circle who have a very small following who are very close to him. For example, he has a photographer who goes everywhere with him, and he's like his brother, he's like his best friend, and you could get any message through him, and now he has almost like 0 following, and through that Omar's designs went in front of the eyes of Jay-Z, and Jay-Z looked at the designs and stuff. So it's very interesting when you just put a tiny bit of effort into like getting your message across, who you can access and how you can access them.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I think like you say, but the psychology, like, it carries over with everything really. Like, how many times have people thought about, well, will anyone else, like, someone else must be also doing this, like, they won't. No one will be interested in what I've got to create. So you've got to overcome that inertia, and I think your life experiences play into that a lot, actually. Like, for example, like, I went through my life where my dad like always took up like new ideas and things like that, and I feel like that had a big impact on me, where if I look at like other people that I know around me, they're very much more like, when you're like starting a project or starting a business, for them it's much more like it's very in the void. Like it feels very abstract. Like they don't know where to start, and it's very it's a scary experience. And I feel like the only reason why I feel differently is because of that experience. We're watching, like, my dad being in the same household and watching that. So I think a lot of it is actually just down to your experiences, and I think I guess that's what it is. Yeah,
I think that's why it's so important to empower your children and let them learn that taking risks is not necessarily a bad thing. Calculated risks is fine. But even then, sometimes you can't calculate all the risks, and so calculate it to the point where the negatives associated with this, if all goes wrong, aren't detrimental, right? Like completely detrimental. If they're not detrimental, it's great to take risks, and giving your children the confidence to feel that they can take risks, that they should take risks, and that there's not going to be a punishment at the end of it if it doesn't go wrong, like in your experience. And it's been the same with me, Abdul-Rahman, really. My dad is very entrepreneurial. He's always been entrepreneurial. Ever since I was young, I saw him. Sometimes things were great, sometimes things were really bad, but he never gave up, and so that made me always feel like, well, I'm going to try different things, and guess what, if they don't work, you just move on.
It's like resilience,
right? So yeah.
But we don't have, as a community, as a lot of Muslims, we're actually quite risk averse, I think.
We are.
Maybe culturally, I don't know if it's a cultural thing,
Probably is.
but a lot of our, maybe it's also because a lot of people, they come from a place of instability. They migrated to places like UK. So the thing they're looking for is stability.
Sure.
Like, it doesn't make sense to come somewhere looking for stability and then be completely kind of taking on all these risks, right? But I think, alhamdulillah, as like we establish ourselves, as we start to have more stability, and our parents, we have to give them a lot of like gratitude for giving us the opportunity and the stability. I think now is the opportunity for a lot of us to kind of explore ideas. And I think there's obviously a careful way of doing it and there's a reckless way of doing it. So like, if you want to start something, it's reckless to just leave your job on day one and kind of go and do it. But at the same time, if you do it as a kind of side thing, and then over time it kind of works out, and then you kind of start to transition from one to the other. Obviously there'll be a jump that you'll have to make, but I think there's a sensible way of going about it. But I think it's a great time now really for a lot of people. And I completely agree with you about kind of making, like, now I think is the time we have to make younger people, children, like, take that risk and try things. Basically, essentially, that's what it is. Like, try new things. Yeah.
I mean, it's very key that it's the young people who are doing it, because the older you get, like, say, once you have a family and everything, like, taking those risks does become a lot harder.
Sure.
Like, alhamdulillah, I'm at university at the moment.
Yeah.
I took the year out, and that was fine to do because I am only at university at the moment. But it would be a very different story or a very different like decision to make if I had to like take a year out of work or just leave my job or something.
And if you had like dependents and stuff,
I actually had someone who left. I think he went to Oxford or Cambridge. He left, and he at the end he said something. He was like, "I really envy your position." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "You don't understand. Like, as a student, you don't have to, like, because you're sort of funded in a way, and you've kind of got like you can explore these other things.
Sure.
You can do other things around that. But when you leave, you have to, like, if you want to start something, like, you need to pay the rent, you need to like get funding, and you have to worry about these things. Whereas as a student, you don't really need to worry about that stuff." And so he was like saying, like, "I'm very envious of your position. You should take advantage of it, because once you leave university, once you're like moving into the world, it becomes a lot harder to kind of start exploring stuff like that." And yeah, it's true, to be honest. Yeah.
I wanted to add to that point, but what we'll just switch your mic out because our other equipment is being very kindly delivered by Nathan Rose. Yeah, it does that.
Spring-loaded.
Yeah, spring-loaded. So we'll switch out your mic and we'll carry on, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay, we're back. So sorry, those of you listening, nothing would have changed for you at all. However, what we did do in the meantime was change Abdul-Rahman's mic. Okay, so I'm going to have to try and pick up on what we spoke about because I wanted to make a point towards it. Can you remind me, Abdul-Rahman? You were saying...
We were talking about taking risks, weren't we?
We were talking about taking risks.
We were talking about whether we're in a position like where we should encourage people to take risks.
Sure.
I mean, that was my point.
I don't know, I've lost it. But oh no, we were talking about university. And I just wanted to build on your point, which is that at uni you kind of have this mask, especially in the culture. I'm in this in my culture. It seems that, or maybe everywhere, productivity is important, especially for our parents. That like, my child is being productive, right? It's not just being a bum. And being in uni for 3 years, it gives you that mask of like no one's going to question if I'm being productive or not, because it's like, okay, he's in uni right now, so 3 years later, then we'll figure it out after. Yeah. And so that cover that you get within, if you maximize on that, because no one's really like pushing you for what you're doing now, like, are you being productive with your time? Because like, oh, you're at uni. In that time, if you're doing stuff like building a project, it's a huge advantage, and an advantage you never get in your life, I think, ever again. And that's talking from experience, someone who's been to uni, then got married, then had children, and I'm like, well, every step that we go, as grateful as I am for that step, from single to marriage, from marriage to one child, from one child to two children, every time you look back and you say, oh, the step before I had so much more time in my hands. And like, even when you're married, you go, oh, I had so much more free time when I was single. Then when you go from married to one kid, you go, I had so much more time when it was just us two. And then you go to two kids, you're like, wow, we even had a lot of time when it was just one kid. And now you're like,
more responsibility.
Right, more responsibility. Now, then when the kid was sleeping, you literally have your free time or napping or whatever. Well, now there's two kids, perhaps they don't sleep at the same time. But let's talk about that. So let's talk about your what you guys are doing and did do when you guys are uni students. So Abdul-Rahman, you're a fifth. Oh, look at that! I just found my Apple Watch that my 1.5-year-old grabs and puts everywhere, and I was looking for it today, and it was in my trouser
It
pocket.
looked like a magic trick. Like you just pulled it
Yeah,
out.
I had my charger for a second. I was actually looking for this, and it's completely dead because he just takes off the charger. You guys at university, Abdul-Rahman, you, if you didn't know, are 50-year medical student at UCL,
Yes.
and Tariq, you are a third year development. You're in a gap year, fourth year.
Took a year out during the fourth year.
During UCL, it's doing computer science and development, something like that. Computer science.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
So let's start at the beginning. So you guys created this app called Pillars. Starting app, I've mentioned on a previous podcast. I didn't know you guys at the time, and I just love the UI. I love the UX, how beautifully it's designed, how beautifully and smooth it's developed. So a huge congratulations to both of you, because Tariq, for those of you guys who don't know, developed it, and Abdul-Rahman designed it, and both the design and the experience were really simple, beautiful, and very much so on par with what we should be doing and what the world is doing right now in regards to UI and UX. So it's a really cool app, and that's called the Pillars app. If you haven't got it, get it. Let's start at the beginning. We're talking November 2020, huge scandal about a Muslim app, the leading Muslim app in the world at that
100
point.
million downloads.
100 million
Yeah.
plus downloads.
Yeah.
And then there was this huge information leak that information is being leaked, right? That our data is being used. Again, without our permission, I guess.
Yeah, being sold to third parties like the US military.
Fine. So let's start there. What was the thoughts, and how did things progress? Let's just hear the story, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess we're on Twitter. We're both quite active on Twitter, I'd say. We're watching this kind of tsunami of tweets that are coming through. You're getting people like Suleiman and Motherboard, which is kind of like part of Vice. People know Vice for their YouTube videos and kind of documentaries. And they essentially found that there was this app that was essentially selling data to a third party that was then selling data to the US government. And so people obviously like shocked, like this app, almost everyone's got it, very trusted, is basically giving away Muslim location data. And people obviously felt a huge sense of betrayal and started to really question the trust that they have with a lot of apps, including that one, obviously. And me and Tariq, we're on a group chat where we're like discussing the issue, and one of us, I actually can't remember exactly who it was.
So I was at the time, like I had, I was in fourth year. I was working on another project. So Abdul-Rahman knew that I had been doing like app development, and so everyone's just discussing the Vice report or article on the group chat, and Abdul-Rahman said like this is something that like there's a clear need for a solution there. That this is something that you should do because he knew that like I had been working on app development. And so from there, like, I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense to do it. I'll do it like this week or something. But then just Abdul-Rahman like kept on messaging. Like he had so many ideas for it, which was really sick, mashallah. And then eventually, like, and this is what I think you posted the screenshot of on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, we agreed, okay, it makes sense because like clearly Abdul-Rahman's like invested in it as well. Like, it makes sense for us to just do it as a joint thing.
Yeah.
Like, he can handle the design and the marketing, and I can handle the development of it. And in that screenshot we mentioned that it's just going to be like a 1 week project.
Yeah. We're like, yeah, bro, it's just 1 week project,
This was
bro. Like, we'll
November.
open source it. Like, that'll be developers, they'll build on it, and inshallah, this is our like gift to the. Like,
and that's why our release was in November 2020 and not 4 months after in April.
There's a bit of a gap, to be fair. So we realized that there's a need. We realized to do, but this came out of nowhere. So we've got our own commitments. Tariq's working on another really exciting app as well. I've got medical school. I'm like working on other stuff, another project that I was working on. So we leave it. But I actually, because I'm so excited, I actually do start designing it.
Yeah.
And but because we're both busy, we don't take it forward. And then later on down the line, I think it was February, March time. I think Tariq's like, I've got a bit of time actually now that I really want to like push this forward. Like, let's make it, because a lot of these ideas, they do die down. Like everyone gets excited, but alhamdulillah, like we didn't actually like let it completely die.
I think I popped up to you with a meme. It's like, because there had been a few conversations where it was like, okay.
Yeah, bro,
like,
I'm still.
It was the Bernie Sanders meme where it's like, once again, I'm asking for your support.
Yeah.
But it was like, once again, I'm apologizing for the delay.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're sending it to me.
Yeah,
That's
he-
amazing.
He's sending it to me
And
because
then,
he's
yeah.
keeping me updated with like when he's going to be
Other
available.
stuff. I caught COVID, and then there was like a
Yeah.
My favorite meme to send is the Nigel Farage one. That's like, you're all laughing at me, but you're not laughing now. It's like perfect for so many scenarios.
Yeah,
I should mention before you guys carry on that Tariq, you mentioned that Abdul-Rahman was invested in the project, and it's worth mentioning that such a cool part of this story is that it had no financial investment, in the sense that when you mentioned invested, you meant from an emotional investment,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
I wanted to prerequisite that just so people know that how ground up this project was, and that's a really cool part of the story.
Yeah. So just carrying on. So we pick it up, and what we decide really is to like do a sprint, like a 4-week sprint. The design actually changed a lot even at that point, even though I'd started it. And we say, okay, we're going to do a sprint, and we're gonna literally share our entire journey on social media. So we're gonna share it all on Twitter, and we do that. I use Sketch for my design, so I screenshotting, that's like sending pictures of like the code with the kind of built up app on the side for people to like see it like being built up from the ground up. And like I said, alhamdulillah, we have complementary skills. We're able to cover like all the bases that you really need for an app. So we didn't need any financial investment. We didn't look for investment, but we did actually get a lot of support, didn't we? Like a lot of people were like, we want to put money into this. We want to donate. Tell me how much money you need for the next 12 months. I'll give you the money that you need. Yeah, we're getting that.
One person literally sent like a Monzo link. They didn't even ask like, okay, can I donate? They just straight up sent a Monzo link.
Yeah,
with money.
like, SubhanAllah, the support.
So
Monzo.
No, I know Monzo is, but I didn't realize you could just send a link.
Yeah,
you just say how much money you want to send.
Or like a check, like a empty check.
Yeah, and then you just put in your like sort code account number, and
so
you'll
it's like
receive that money.
It's the opposite of what you do when you send it.
Yeah.
You put in your details.
I feel like such an old man. So like a plate. Someone give you an empty check.
No, it wasn't quite an empty check. I wish, but it was like that was a sort of like openness and support that we were getting.
That's amazing.
And we were very.
We still get requests like that to this day.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. There are reasons why we haven't accepted like anything as of yet, but we're happy to talk about that as well. But,
I think it shows a lot of support also from the community. Like people were really backing us, which was really nice. Like putting the money like where the mouth is in a way. Like sometimes people support, but I feel like we really did have the drive of the community, and we were very engaging with the community. We would often do polls. We'd often like share designs, like iterations of designs, and be like, okay guys, would you like this one or the other one, and take that into it. And we were very engaged. Like almost every comment under our tweets we'd always reply to, and we felt. The reason we felt that was so important was because of the trust that had been lost in the original scandal, and we felt if we didn't do that, we would just be another app on the App Store, because there's tons of them. Man, if you search it up, you will see like scroll. You'll get hundreds and hundreds of these apps, and I think the main reason we differentiate ourselves is because we engage with the community. We put our faces on it, because if anyone had insincere like kind of I guess like intentions exactly.
They were gonna track your data, sell it.
They wouldn't do it, would they?
They'll hide behind like a brand, company. But that is like part of our promise as well.
It's sort of a guarantee, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, like for example, they want us to open source the project. It's not quite possible for us to open source it given our long-term vision. But what we say is actually we're very public, we're very open. If there was ever to be like some sort of scandal, we'd be like
the mob would be directed at us, not at a company.
So we're sort of putting our identity on the line. And we're sort of guaranteeing to the community that, and obviously other things that we try to do to reassure the community that this is our intention. We're not taking any data. Like you'll see it under our app, no data collected whatsoever, and we're very proud of that. It's kind of our motto is like we're ad free. We're privacy focused, no data collected, and we're Muslim made, and the design's like another one. But those are our three kind of things, and alhamdulillah, that's been a big one. Yeah.
I love that, and I love how forward thinking it is, because of course the fact that you guys are onboarding so many users. I was mentioning to Abdul-Rahman earlier that the two kind of key ways, as you guys would know, that apps make money nowadays is by selling their data. WhatsApp sold for $1 billion to Facebook for that exact reason, because they have so many users, and secondly through ads. And the fact that you guys have given a guarantee from the very beginning, not knowing how much it would kick off, you kind of shot yourselves in the foot, right? But it's because of that reason that it's, I'm sure, kicked off. I think that's amazing, because you're forward thinkers and you future proofed, because of course there's an opportunity for you guys to really build this app out, and I'm sure you would, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what's amazing is I said, well, now your whole brand is about the two things that people make the most money off, and you
Monetizing.
guys could never do, which is collecting data,
Yeah.
selling data
And ads.
and ads. And your response, Abdul-Rahman, was just amazing. You said, well, that's not a very it's kind of like a dying art, isn't it? It's like the future. We predict that in the short term future, it's going to be a situation where you won't be able to sell data anyway. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's many opportunities as we mentioned, like a premium in-app purchases and stuff like that. So
you can be very like there's you can putting an ad and then saying, if you pay, I'll remove it. Is a very uncreative way of trying to monetize something.
Yeah.
What you should really be doing is thinking, how can I provide even more value? Like the value that we're providing, alhamdulillah, is by a simple app that's well designed, easy to use. But for us, the next goal is actually what we want to do is build something which has so much value that people are like, I want this. Like,
sure.
this is so good and it's so important to me. But we obviously have a kind of litmus test on what stuff we don't plan to do like monetize absolutely everything. There are things
we're
that
not going to monetize prayer or anything.
Yeah. Well, it's really important for us actually, like, not to like commercialize the deen. Essentially, there's a balance really that you need to meet. And for us, it's about like maslaha, like what if it's really important for the community. For example, if it's someone who's struggling to pray, that's a fard, then that's something we want to do for free. That should be part of the app in its core. But if it's something like beyond that, something that isn't necessarily a fard, or something more of a convenience that will help someone, for example, achieve their goals, then that's something that we would consider for monetizing. I think this
or
this
something like
we'll continue
aesthetics,
to have,
like say extra themes or designs. Or something like
it's a conversation we'll continue to have and have with the community. I think actually, because I think I actually have a tweet thread. It's in my drafts. It's like going through the entire thought process of like why we're not necessarily accepting donations, why we don't really want to go down that route, because we don't want it to be like completely a charitable kind of cause, because then that puts an onus on us and how we use the money, if we spend the money, and that's a very important aspect, right?
I mean, like, so the people who are offering us money now at the moment, it's like the reality of the app itself, there aren't any costs aside from the license fees that we had to pay initially. The other things that we are paying for are things like
MailChimp.
MailChimp. So like having a mailing list. There's App Radar. Are we using a trial?
We're not paying for that.
But it's like in future we may like say pay for.
Naturally, as a business grows, you're gonna have business costs. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, of
but
course.
even then, so some people have asked us to like donate for Sadaqah Jariyah, but it's like we don't know if
what would we use it on.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing in the app itself that needs that money, and so we can't just hold on to that money with the promise of it being for Sadaqah Jariyah.
The reality is the biggest investment is our time. So if we were to pay, it'd be paying ourselves a salary so that we could actually do this like properly and do, like after university, for example, out of or on the side. But in the reality, if we were to accept donations to pay ourselves a salary, that's a huge conflict of interest. And so I don't know, in terms of sincerity, I don't know if that's not something that I would potentially accept donations for. I think I personally like the idea of building things that provide value and giving it and people paying us money with me feeling very happy about that transaction, feeling that I provided that person value. They felt that that's really important, and they've provided me money in exchange, because that's what paying for stuff is. It's an exchange of
something like ads
exchanging value.
It's like holding someone ransom, like saying, okay, pay us and then we'll remove the ads. It's not nice.
It is that holding someone ransom. Do you know what, guys, I absolutely I'm in, it's like music to my ears, for lack of a better term. I love hearing this kind of stuff, because I feel like there needs to be more of it. We've had so many challenges ourselves internally at Freshly Grounded with similar things. I think when you are outwardly Muslim with your brand, there's some great aspects of that, and one of them is that people, when people really support your work, it's lovely to have people support your work. And there's people in the community who want to support your work financially and all sorts. And I was speaking to Kareem when he first jumped on, who's our logistics guy, and it's very important to me that when we do monetize, that we can monetize as much as possible and as fast as possible through stuff like, for example, selling the product, like our game that we have, and the live events, by selling tickets, having sponsorships, having brand deals on live events and stuff like that, rather than somebody giving us money and for nothing, right? Like they get nothing out of it. It's not a business transaction.
It's not a transaction. It's literally just a donation.
Right.
Yeah.
And and even then we had that challenge when it came to Patreon, and so it was very important to me that with Patreon we provide a service, and we recently revamped our Patreon because I wanted to make sure the service was being provided, and that could be anything like what it is for our Patreon is they get the episodes early, they get a few ways of communicating with us that others perhaps don't, they get other shows early, they get some Zoom sessions and stuff like that. But I think that your guys' sincerity is admirable, and the way you speak, you can very much so tell that it's not a facade. I love that because you can tell very quickly. You can either see in someone, you get a gut feeling about someone. This is a bit dodgy, and equally, most of the time, you can see when someone's very transparent and very pure. And I think that I hope the audience will agree with me that you guys really do come across like that, like to almost like
it's a huge compliment.
Almost like social network kind of like story kind of guys.
We're not business.
Who are just. But it's amazing, and I'd keep it that way, man. And you got to be conscious of people who would come in and try and infiltrate on that and take advantage of that and try and. I mean, businessman.
That's why we're quite wary about people say investing or trying to like acquire us or anything like that, because we know the initial like mission that we set out with,
we have to
become corrupt.
I think one concern is as alhamdulillah, like we've got to a good number of downloads now, but as we start to get beyond the community that we have a direct connection to, and we because we've been, like I said, been engaging really well, alhamdulillah, and something really important to us is that Twitter kind of community that where we're able to continuously get feedback and get thoughts as we grow, and we sort of get to people who don't necessarily, that they've heard it from a person who's heard it from a person, and they're very much outside of that bubble.
Sure.
Then they don't necessarily have a connection with us and don't necessarily know the vision of the app. They just see it as another prayer app. Whereas for us, this is just the start of actually a lot more. And we would like us to be able to have that direct connection with everyone really who uses that app, as hard as that might be. And so I think for us that's the challenge really going forward, and me and Tariq were talking about it, but it's much more important for us to build this strong, like stable foundation where we have connection with the community and grow that more like slowly in a stable way, than to have this quick kind of paid ads on like a huge number of like TikTok and a huge number of like social media platforms and get to like 1 million downloads very quickly, very easily. But everyone's like they're very, like, if you want to call it, flimsy users, in the sense that they don't have a connection with the brand, that you're just another app that they're trying out.
And at that point it's like you start to be viewed as a company rather than just people who have made this app.
Yeah, that's like, true.
As a service.
Yeah.
And we don't want Pillars to just be viewed as like some company's app.
How do you intend on building that sense of community at scale?
I think it's replicating. So Twitter's a very, like, most Muslims aren't on Twitter really. So replicating what we've done on Muslims across other social media platforms really. So TikTok and Instagram. Like Instagram now is not we don't necessarily have that community. In all honesty, I'm not a big Instagram user, so I don't know how to go about that. Whereas I've always been a Twitter user, so I understand how you might go about that sort of thing. So I think learning about that and going about it where we're like sharing, I think to a certain degree, so this is a whole other thing, but like to what degree you share your life and show people what you're up to, and kind of how much you show people of your life, how much you should do that. It is a big question, but I think that you really do need to do that actually.
Have you read the book Show Your Work?
I've heard Austin Kleon.
I believe so.
Yeah. I've seen the Ali Abdal like video about like it being a really big one.
I think I can't remember if I've read the book or if I've seen like a general synopsis of the book.
Yeah.
That makes me sound so arrogant. Like I read so many books. I might have read that one, and I don't read that many. But I've read a lot of books in that category of books. You know, like I'd categorize that in like James Clear's Atomic Habits and Productivity.
It's
books,
in that
right?
space. Yeah, so definitely.
But the concept, I've been struggling with that a lot as well. This idea of how much to share, and I think I've found a good balance now. And I think that balance is having a list of some things that under no circumstances do you share, right? Okay. And so for that might for me that might be like, and is like my immediate family stuff, or even my external family, like family in general. I try and protect that as much as I can, and I might I talk about my kids all the time, right? And I'm happy to talk about my kids. I'm happy to share those experiences. We have a show in here called Dad's Dunya, which is like all about parenting. So I'm very open in that regard, but not, as a parent, you are constantly taking pictures and videos, and you want to share it with the world because you feel proud of those pictures and videos.
Of course.
But it's a red line for me. And then there's other things as well. Perhaps it's to do with your religious obligations, things that your religious studies and stuff like that. Sometimes those things seep into naturally into the public because you might be putting on a story and it involves that. But I'm trying my best to ensure that that isn't is as a small of like a highlight as possible. And then after that, I think with regards to work, with regards to projects that you're working on, man, show as much as you can for a few reasons. One, because as you guys have experienced, the community and the people who do follow you and who support you and who love you, you kind of owe it to them. Like, in a sense that these are loyal people who are, because of, obviously, first of all, because of Allah, but through these people and through their support, you've been able to build on this project.
100%.
And we feel like that at Freshly Grounded. Freshly Grounded wouldn't exist if there wasn't ears listening to it. And so we want to do as much as we can to support them. And so there's actually little kind of hacks that I've found. Like if a person physically comes up to me and says, and this has happened in the past, and they've said, "I love Freshly Grounded." So the first time I went on tour, after I had Zakaria, some people came, so the tour wasn't a Freshly Grounded tour, it was the Mufti Mate tour. And so that was like a couple weeks after we had my first child, Zakaria. And so people would come up to me, "I love Freshly Grounded, and congratulations on having your child." And I would always say to them, "Oh, thank you so much. Do you want to see a picture of him? Do you want to see his videos?" And they say, "Yeah, of course." I show them, like, "This is him, then this is when he was born, here's a video of him." And they love it. And because this person in front of me has supported me, has because of their them listening, I've been able to carry out my dream. And
it's like you owe it to them.
They've been part of the journey. And they are like my family.
Yeah.
The problem with social media is that there's a mix of those who support you, those who are just watching because perhaps there's an element of like envy, perhaps there's an element of envy is not a great word because envy makes it seem like my life is something worth envying, and it really is not. And I'm not trying to be humble, I mean that. So I mean more from an angle of I don't know another way of saying it other than a hater, but a hater is such a horrible word. I don't like use it. I think that's the first time I've ever used that word. Someone who's watching who doesn't have clean intentions for you, right? You don't know who's about and who's watching. So their little hacks I like to use. But otherwise, I do like to share what I can work-wise. I like to share my thoughts that are harmless. And I found Twitter being such a great place for that.
It is. I'm surprised you only joined quite recently. It's the perfect place for people like yourself to kind of come, because I feel like it's a very like... It's a thought-provoking space, to be fair. It's got its downsides, but
definitely,
it's good for that sort of thing. Exactly what you're talking about.
I've really been enjoying Twitter recently. Over the past few months, I actually did have Twitter when I was like in its early days, and then I just kind of. But I haven't been an avid Twitter user until, I don't know how long it's been, 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
I mean, everyone sort of goes through that stage. Like they'll first install Twitter and find it a bit weird.
It's a classic life cycle of Twitter users.
But I'm loving it.
Yeah, they uninstall it and then they come back a few months or weeks later and they love it, and it's like it's an addiction at that point.
It's just like it's the perfect place to share your shower thoughts. Yeah, you know? It's just like the thoughts that you have, you put them out in the world, and you realize how many people relate to them and stuff like that. I've been really, really enjoying it, and I think it's the same situation as the physical world, which is Twitter can be a very harmful place, but so can the world. And if you are surrounding yourself around people who can be harmful to your like your aura, to your space, to your iman, then of course you're going to have a negative life. You're going to have bad friends. You're going to have people you don't trust. If you likewise follow topics and people who have a very gossipy, a very negative, very assumative, if that's a word, personality, you're gonna have those negative vibes. I love following like startup topics, CEOs, psychologists, people like you guys, like yourselves, who are in who are kind of in the Muslim space of startups and stuff like that. And in that, I think you get to actually expand your mind out. You get to see loads of thoughts and feelings.
But you're right. There's like it's a reinforcing element to it, though. So if you go onto Twitter and you engage with the startups, you will get a lot of that onto your timeline. But if you engage with the more negative stuff, it's very easy to it'll reinforce that bubble. You will be sucked into a bubble. I notice, because I go through phases, like my timeline will sometimes be full of like lots of Muslim related stuff, and then in times of the year it will be full of lots of medical related stuff, and like this medical scandal or whatever, like medical story, and that happens, and I don't know how healthy that is actually, because I think
I'm sure it's very like
it's not good to like not be very. It's good if you're taking everything in moderation and you're taking Twitter in moderation, but for me personally, I use Twitter pretty much as my only source of social media. It's like my main source of social media. So for me, like if that's very focused on one thing, then I could end up being very kind of sucked into that world, and I'm wary of that actually. It's good to follow. They often say it's a good piece of advice is to follow people and engage with people who don't necessarily have the same opinion as yourself.
Sure.
And I think that is actually really important. I've noticed that.
Yeah, like otherwise it would just become like an echo chamber, and there's not really much benefit to that. But equally, like, it's a bit of a tangent, but it's like similar to what
we
you
love
were saying.
tangents. We love them.
Nice. Yeah, it's like you really have to be selective about who you follow.
Sure.
And yeah, that's exactly what you were saying about how you follow like startup people. It's a bit bad, but like say on Instagram, for instance, like I've muted 90% of the people that I follow.
Wow.
Like
I think I know what you're like.
Yeah, it's not out of like dislike or anything like that, but it is just like you have to be really strict with what you are seeing on social media.
Sure.
I feel like
Sure.
So 100% of my feed is just like beneficial content such as James Clear, other authors, and then memes.
You do that so well because you went beneficial people such as James Clear. So I was thinking,
such as yourself as well.
It's fine. Tariq, you explained yourself. I think those people are very, very inspiring. I used to be a huge fan of. I mention him a lot in the podcast in around like. If someone's been like a midterm refresher guide listener, there's a phase I went through. I was always mentioning. Oh gosh, now I don't even know his name. Let
Is he
alone
an author? Or?
Yeah, he's an author. He's the author of my ex-favorite book. Oh gosh, Ryan Holiday.
Haven't heard of it.
Ryan Holiday has written some amazing books.
Which book?
He's written Ego is the Enemy. Ego is the Enemy. There's a book about Stoicism. Which I love.
Cool. Yeah.
It was my first book I read on Stoicism, and I just read it a few times, listened to it. I had a physical version and everything. I just like became obsessed with this content, which was the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the way. One of my all-time favorite books. And I became obsessed with like listening to Ryan Holiday's content. But the problem is that you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Because as Muslims, we have to understand what we can accept from these people and these books and what we can't. And if you're not mentally or emotionally prepared for that, it's a bad book to read. And as are most books.
That's interesting. What do you mean by that? Like, what?
Well, okay, so the obstacle is the way, and and by association, Stoicism is something that as a Muslim you have to be very careful with. There's great concepts of Stoicism. A lot of Islam is about Stoicism, if you think about it, because it's about there's a concept in Islam called Sabr and Jamil, which is to have the type of patience where if whether you get great news or really bad news, your emotions never go up and down
like
extravagantly.
Hedonic treadmill.
Right, like you're not.
You sort of accept what's going to happen before it's happened.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a huge Islamic element in that. There's also an Islamic element of being realistic. There's an Islamic element of being in control of your emotions, allowing yourself to feel happiness but not going eccentric with it, allowing yourself to feel sadness but not breaking the house. And that's what Stoicism is about. It's great. And that book was my introduction to Stoicism, which I loved. However, there's an element of Stoicism and like I said, by association, obstacle is the way, which can become slightly like, I don't know, shirky in the sense that the quote unquote founding fathers of Stoicism are people like who's that?
I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's not like Confucius.
No, but it's along lines that but people must be screaming at their screens right now.
Don't look at me. I
want to say like Hercules.
What does it begin with?
Gosh.
No, but
I
Aristotle.
was gonna say, but it's not.
No, I don't think.
I'll tell you right now. It's such an obvious one. I'm just googling Stoicism. It's this guy. What's his name?
But, I was literally looking at a meme, and it's so true. Like a lot of the kind
Epictetus.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I heard of it.
I'm not familiar, but a lot of the stuff that you get from productivity books has actually been like that. A lot of it is actually from. Okay,
Is this
I don't
Mr.
want to.
Bean
Yeah,
meme
the Mr.
where he's
Bean,
looking
yeah.
over? Yeah.
So I can't categorically say that it's definitely copy paste from the Islamic tradition, but a lot of the stuff that they talk about is significant elements, like specific sciences that we actually
believe
have in the Islamic tradition. And in terms of habit building and in terms of like, I mean, Stoicism is like kind of purpose of life, right? That's what it's really all about.
Sure.
A lot of it is like, there's different kind of aspects that have been basically packaged into these modern kind of Western books. And there's an element of how much of it has actually been taken from our tradition. And I think the really sad reality is that if only those sort of things were more accessible or
Sure,
Muslims,
yeah.
rather than looking to like books like this, because they've just packaged it in a really nice way. We don't look at Islam and think, oh, that can give me the solutions to these sorts of things as well. That can give me the solution to help me build habits. Like if you look at the tradition and how you build a habit based on what scholars would do and students of knowledge would do if they wanted, for example, to implement a change into their life. Say, for example, they spend 40 days where they would try, like they'd say, so you start 40 days and you say, okay, I'm, for example, I'm not going to lie. That's a commitment that I've made. I'm not going to lie for 40 days. And the way that I'm going to guarantee it is I'm going to tell people around me. I'm going to get like accountability, like people, like someone that can be accountable to me. So every
Hold
day,
you accountable,
So let's say me and Tariq decide to take on this commitment. We every day we say we're going to call each other in the evening. We're going to check each other and see if we've stuck to it. And if we mess up, we're going to start again from day one. And you have to do it for 40 days straight. And if we, for example, mess up, we have to fast. Or we might agree to give money to charity, a set amount of money to charity. And all these sorts of things, actually, you can find a lot of this stuff that's taken from places like Atomic Habits. And you can find it from other like self-help and productivity gurus and that sort of thing. And it's just a shame. And I think something that would be really nice is for us to kind of bring that back to the community.
I mean, I'm sure you've heard like one of the most famous self-help books, or just like productivity sort of, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
classic.
Do you have it?
My
dad bought
the reason I mentioned Obstacle Way is my ex-favorite book is because that's my absolute
Nice.
favorite book.
It is an amazing book. I've read
How
like,
to Win
the
Friends
first
and
few
Influence
chapters,
People. Have you read his other book?
He's got a lot. There's quite
how
a few.
to
Dale
how
Carnegie,
to, how
right?
to Dale Carnegie. How to start how to stop worrying and start living.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. But
Tariq.
amazing books.
Really?
And he used to run courses, right? But there was
This guy was ahead of his time, bro.
Yeah, it's
that
crazy.
book, I'm sorry, was written in 1934.
But it was a bestseller. It was a
and
bestseller.
it's still very applicable
It's
today.
still a bestseller.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
But the reason
amazing.
The
but the reason I
timeless
brought
ones.
it up is because there's a sheikh. Forgive me, I can't remember his name.
Fine.
But he had read the book growing up, and
Yep.
he spoke about how amazing it is. But he realized a lot of these teachings from the book, again,
Yeah.
similar to what you both said, were already like prophetic,
tradition.
like traditions.
Exactly.
And so he made his own book, and again, I can't remember the name. Unfortunately, I'll try and find it after. But he made his own book, where it was essentially the similar thing, but backed up, it even included more teachings, but everything from hadith. Yeah,
It's
very
sort of like
similar.
reinforced, like the evidence for it.
Yeah,
is
everything.
From, yeah. I think I think what would be good is if we were able to shift that mindset. Like different things appear, like in religion, different parts of religion appeal to different people, right? For some people, it's the sense of community. For some people, it's the kind of logic, the theology behind it. And for some people, it's actually about improving yourself and the character. And I think the productivity and the kind of, that's a huge space, right? On YouTube or on Twitter or on social media, the productivity kind of improving, becoming more efficient, doing more, getting more out of life. What does it mean to be successful? We have answers to all of those questions. Like we literally have every single answer to these questions. And I think it's a shame that we don't package sort of the deen, or I don't want to say package because it's not us who's packaging it, but a shame that we don't emphasize that part of the deen as much. And I don't think actually it's our fault really as Muslims, because we don't do those things ourselves.
It's not like we look for examples or answers necessarily in the deen as a first sort of response sort
That's
of thing.
very true.
We'll go on
Yeah.
Amazon and we'll look up books on this thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's true, and I if you look at the fact that character, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke so highly of character and about how heavily character weighs on your scales, it shows that these kind of books, like you mentioned, should be written by Muslims because of the fact, and with the same context, except backed by hadith, like you mentioned, because character is so highly seen in Islam, and you mentioned. you mentioned this sheikh who wrote this, like the How to Win Friends and Influence People, backed up by hadith. And when I was reading it, that's one of the things that I thought about a lot. Like some of the stuff that he mentions is how smiling at people can change so
charity,
much. Obviously, we know
it's a charity.
And
right?
that's literally one of the rules in his
book.
yeah.
He also mentions that some of these names that person is the sweetest thing they could hear, and again something that's like backed by the Sunnah. And so these are all like really, really cool elements. I agree that this content should be more readily available, and that's more suited towards a Muslim, because the asl of these pieces of content is Islam. Like managing your stress, being great at networking. These are all Islamic. There's answers to these from Islam that are the correct answers, and so people are taking parts of those answers and then like adding their own elements, and then it's like the parts of it are good, but then it's like we actually have the perfect answer, like you mentioned. Another part of it is that I think is huge is money management. Islam tells us all about money management, and one of the guys that I've really found beneficial was Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is a Christian money finance kind of advisor. He's like transformed people's lives with his like advices and with his systems, and I've taken on a lot of his systems, and it's changed my life. But there's flaws because he's not Muslim. So one of the so I can only follow his system to a certain extent, because I will not take up interest, for example. But there's some fundamental elements of his system that is great. Examples include the fact that your every pound should have a label on it, a great concept, so you never are unaware. There's no money sitting in your account that you don't know what's happening. Everything has a label on it. There's a use for everything. Another one is that you don't pay for anything unless you can afford it, because nowadays we live in a world of interest-free finance.
Klarna.
Exactly. The fact that it's interest-free is very scary, because now we've made it, because before the Muslims, even the ones who wouldn't go for interest-based loans, now they can go for these options because it's interest-free.
It's crazy that stuff like this still happens. Like if you just look at the crash of 2008, the main reason that crash happened was because people were taking out mortgages, or they were doing it unfettered. That happened specifically because people were spending outside of their means. Right, and I think for us Muslims, it's really important that we don't ever do that, because it's very easy to get out of hand. If you start to buy things, for example, and you say, oh well, at the end of the month when my paycheck comes through, I'm going to be able to pay this. If you keep saying that to yourself and you're not actually tracking this stuff, and it's very easy to do that, it's just another way. It's just another way to get
and I feel
people,
like it starts at uni as well, because all these banks, like, they offer interest-free overdraft.
With student finance, do you not think that people...
Student finance is fine.
How do you think that people treat the money that they get through student finance compared to the money that they would get if they were to work for it? So the student finance, if that like 1k, 2k, whatever comes through, do they treat that as if they've been working, for example, in a retail job for 1k or 2k? Because they're going to have to pay it back. They're going to have to pay it back with interest. So do you think they treat it in the same way? Absolutely not. It's not treated that way at all, and that's a big concern, right? And for me, going back to like the point about like character and how important it is, like if you even look at the early converts to Islam, and you look at the reasons they converted, it was actually a lot to do with the Prophet ﷺ's character, and he was very well known for being the trustworthy and the honest, and people would often leave their money with him when they went to travel, because they knew he would take safe care of it, and a lot of it was down to that. It wasn't down to like explaining like theology and for some people that will be the interesting, but the reason why they might come to the deen, because it makes sense to them, the idea of like one God, etc. But for a lot of people it's not. It's like, if there's such a beautiful character, such a beautiful way of living life, such beautiful answers to the questions that I'm facing, this must come from a true source. And that's what I think we need to kind of reintroduce Islam into the other elements in our life. We compartmentalize it too much, in my opinion.
I think there's a space for thinkers like this who think how you're explaining to put together almost like the ultimate productivity book, right? But it needs to start somewhere. It needs to start with trying to implement those changes in your life first, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to add systems in my life that I feel like I could then go on and teach is a bad word, but maybe teach or write about, because you can't do that if you're not living it.
What do you think is the most important thing
but I think
to like implement into your life?
I think life's a game of inches, and that is all of these little inches add up to the big picture. And so I can't put my finger on it. I think that if you look at take any part of life individually, you can break down what needs to be fixed there to add to that puzzle. So finances, like I mentioned, is one part of it. In fact, you know what, in talking about the fact that this book almost needs to exist, I kind of I thought to myself, well, how do we reverse engineer that? This thing needs to exist at the end. It doesn't matter how many people author it. Let's say if us three sat together and ended up like piecing together parts in 10 years' time, and we write this book over 10 years, but it's something that we can give to the community that is that can just help one of those inches, right? Yeah. And so I started reverse engineering it, thinking, well, I can't get to there right now. There's a lot of elements in it. There's also a lot to think about. There's also a lot of time that's taken. You hear Tim Ferriss talk about how when he wrote his books, like as successful as his books have been, he's hated the process of writing books, and he's doing it on modafinil and all these other drugs just to like be up and getting it done. And I'm aware of that. I'm aware that is probably the point that I'm going to need to get to eventually. Yeah. But if I reverse engineer it, where you start and where all great books start is blog articles. And so we have a function on the Freshly Grounded website as a blog, which we don't use too often. But I'm trying to kind of get myself, and I'm trying to hold myself accountable to writing small blogs on these smaller problems that I can then eventually pull from these blog articles, adapt them, and turn into a book.
Twitter's
I've actually
a
got
really
one
good place because when you, like you say, when you get these thoughts, you post them onto Twitter. Twitter's basically very, very short form.
That's very
articles,
true,
right? And threads are basically an extension of that. And what a lot of people do is they do these tweets and they like kind of see the engagement, and they take those ideas, and what they do is they then form them into blog pieces. And is, I don't know if you saw, but very like maybe like the start of lockdown, a lot of people were getting very into everyone was starting their own newsletter. I don't know if you guys like, there was like subscribe to my Substack, and it was getting very popular. And I think this like thought sharing, it's getting back into, it's becoming more popular again. This idea of sharing your thoughts. I think there is one issue though, and the issue is how much. And I was actually going to post something about this on Twitter recently. How much we're creating a lot. How much are we actually, like there's a lot of supply that's happening in the creator economy, in this kind of content creation space, but how much of it are we actually taking? Like is the demand there, and how much of it are we actually consuming, and have we reached the limit? Because it's getting quite condensed essentially.
I think that we have a very long way to go before we reach the limit.
Really?
And the reason I believe that is because the world is adapting so fast, technology is adapting so fast, so there's always new things to learn about. So as technologies advance, there's new things that we have to learn how to interact with in life, and therefore new ways we have to learn, but also things that help, technologies that help us improve ourselves. So forming great habits has always been something that's a century-long issue, but now new technologies help us to form better habits. So how do we interact with technologies, or how do we form habits in this new way of life? Life is always evolving. So in life now, with interest, like with stuff like Klarna, now how do we have habits to? How do we have the discipline? Have discipline to control those kind of things? And like I said again, I think it starts with the self, and that's what I'm really trying to work on now, so that I can have something to stand on when I do try and see if I can have an impact on the community. Things like. Okay, a quote that really benefited me. I want to read you guys. I don't even know how much of it I've written, but I'll read it in a second. But something that really benefited me years ago is I read a quote that somebody sent by a scholar that said, "I found that the time I would sin the most was when my stomach would be full." And the psychology behind it is that and bear in mind that eating generally is permissible, right? And so, but what he said, and what the psychology behind it is that once you satisfy one desire, it's very easy to satisfy a second desire. So when you eat anything you ever want to eat, now you're just satisfying desires left, right, and center. So it's not hard to. So now it's a bit easier psychologically to satisfy more desires. And so one thing I'm trying to implement is being more disciplined with what I eat, because that's a strong desire of mine, food, like it is for most of us. So if I can discipline myself on that desire, imagine how powerful I become. If I become powerful and I understand the effect of it, I can then say this is my experience. And I had that experience with money, and I'll read you guys at the beginning of a blog article that I'm still working on, but it's to do with this money thing that I mentioned. I've written so far. I need to continue this article. I've literally wrote this bit about 3 weeks ago, and 27th of May. Oh my gosh, time flies. Now in July. I said, I've made it clear in previous videos that I am not intrinsically good with money. In fact, being a now 20-something grown man and dad of two, I feel quite frustrated that money etiquette is not taught in any aspect of our compulsory education.
Yeah, that's a big one.
My money habits growing up had never been great. I very much saw the money in my bank account as a spending target as opposed to an asset that I need to distribute amongst several branches. I know now that the money in my account should be assigned to areas such as savings, investments, expenses, and emergency funds. But how did a person as unorganized with finances as myself begin to change his relationship with money? I came across a mind-blowing statement when finally watching a Dave Ramsey video that my friend Hamza had been onto me about for years. Ramsey said, and this has really affected me. Ramsey said that money is not a math problem. If it were, then we would all be rich. it's a psychology problem. We have to change our mindset with money, not just how we count or our outgoings or budget our night outs. An example he gives is when paying off debts, we should start smallest to largest. This mathematically makes zero sense, as you would incur more interest on larger debts and therefore should hasten to pay them off as soon as possible to avoid larger fees. Now, it goes without saying that as Muslims, we avoid interest-based loans and so shouldn't ever have this problem, but just suspend your reality and indulge in this example with me for a second. That's how much I've written so far.
Yeah.
The point I'm getting at here, and you can probably tell that I'm like, in the back of my head I have this like booking mind, right? But this is like one of those inches. It's like, if we can understand that you can adapt. I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who is intrinsically growing up had bad experience with money. If it's in my account, it's there to spend. I never saved it, and so on and so forth. And if someone like that can then change his mindset, change his attitude towards money, and actually fix it, and have things like an emergency fund, or be able to like calculate for the month or pay off debts and so on and so forth, then perhaps that's something that we can all do. But then also the effect that it's had on me. But it's a shame that we have to, for example, go to someone like this particular book to understand that.
Because it's not spoken about. Like how many khutbahs have you guys sat in where they've spoken about something like
That's
this?
an incredibly valid point.
And how many times have you, like, I don't think people realize, but it's actually a ibadah. Like the way you work and the way you earn money, it's a ibadah. The way that you spend is a ibadah. The food that you eat can be a ibadah, etc., etc. And I absolutely agree. I think there are like amazing tools out there these days. Like you're talking about like how you can separate your money, give it everything a label. You were saying earlier, like everything in your account, every pound should have a label. Things like Monzo, for example, pots. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. And like you can kind of, now you can even like siphon off your money before it even hits the main account. Like you can tell what your salary is, and you can tell it, okay, I want £300 of this to go straight into the rent pot. I never see it. It's like sort of, it's in that category and I can't spend it. And that's great. But what does it rely on? Your psychology, your kind
it
of...
does require
because you could easily go and pull it back out.
Exactly.
So what's going to stop you doing that? What's going to encourage you to set it up in the first place? And you need to have the discipline. And actually a really good book, I don't know if you guys have... Tariq has come across it. It's The Agenda to Change Your Condition. I don't know if you've read it. It's basically a very short version of the productivity book that you're probably like thinking about.
Fine.
But it doesn't go into as much detail as I think it needs to be. It's very short. It's nice. You can get through it quickly, which is really nice about
more
it.
of a handbook, right?
It's more of a handbook, yeah. And it gives you first of all, it gives you the targets in terms of what you should be thinking about. So you should be thinking about the tongue and the impact of the tongue in terms of lots of things that the tongue can do, lying, backbiting, that sort of thing. The stomach was a big part of it. Like it's a big conversation in that book.
Look how Islamic these things are.
Yeah.
It's
And
amazing,
it's like guarding the tongue, guarding the stomach, guarding the appendages between your legs. There's like and there's like there's maybe two or other ones. Maybe eyesight's one.
Yeah.
Wow,
hearing's
that's
one.
amazing.
Yeah, and
it's very good.
And there's huge stuff, and there's lots of good podcasts. I mean, Mohammed Ghilan, for example, great. He does a specific podcast on where he goes through these sorts of lessons and things like that. And I think the problem is, and we were talking about this before the podcast, but the content's there. It's not necessarily as widespread as it should be, but it's there. It's there in English as well for the Western audience, the Western Muslim audience. But to what extent is our problem to do with the tools, and to what extent is the problem actually the spark? So like, if you don't want to, if you don't see it as a problem, you don't see the problem of overeating, and you don't see the problem of backbiting and lying, and you don't seek to make the change. In terms of if you want to make the change, the tools are there. You can read the podcast, listen to the podcast. You can read the book that we were talking about. But if you don't want to start, then none of it really matters. Yeah. And I more and more I start to think about, because this is stuff that we want to do with the app, for example, is building tools to help you achieve some of these goals. But the app can't help you with that spark. And I don't know how many things can. I think something has to happen. You have to be inspired. You have to kind of explore things. You have to make dua. You have to pray, and you kind of have to. There's no clear-cut journey really to that, and I've tried to pinpoint it as much as I can, and try to pinpoint what can be done to try and help myself first and foremost, but others as well, kind of be more get the motivation, as you were saying, to start these changes in their lives. But I don't know, it'd be good to get your thoughts.
You know what's really interesting is that I read something about this, and it was essentially what you were talking about is motivation and inspiration.
Yeah.
What I read about motivation is it ignited something within me. It's like when you come up with an epiphany, you're like, wow, this is something that's always been so clear, but I never really understood it. And it was that essentially the fact that motivation is temporary, and that so I think there's even a quote that says everybody says that motivation doesn't last, but neither does a bath. That's why we recommend it daily. And the point is that motivation doesn't last. But I think but people are motivated all the time. We go for spikes of motivation. So I don't think, and that's the spark that you're talking about. For example, Ramadan. In Ramadan, people go through motivation of increasing of being a better Muslim. Or throughout the year, someone might die, and then all of a sudden you're like, I need to be a better Muslim because I have to die.
Especially when
so
it's close.
The problem with motivation is that it dies down very quickly. So I think that what we need to do is an advice that a sheikh once gave me, and he said, so this is the Islamic version of the advice, and I'm going to relate it back to motivation now. It'll be very obvious. The Islamic advice that I was given is when your iman is high, when you feel your iman is high, do the things that you normally find hard. Go the extra mile. Pray the sunnah prayers. Do the sunnah fast. Do things that are the extra mile because you're feeling strong on iman. When your iman is feeling weak, just do the things that are easy for you to, so you can get over through this wave. Obviously, bar the fundamentals, but the point is
keep walking, keep moving forward.
When your iman is high, you build the habits, so that when your iman is low, your bar has been raised now. Now, the things that are easy for me are praying all of my sunnah prayers, still fasting Mondays and Thursdays. And then when my iman is high, it's like seeking knowledge to another degree. Yeah. But what you're doing is you're using the motivation and you're taking advantage of it.
That's exactly what like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. He says
really?
Like you fall to your systems, you don't raise to your goals.
Exactly.
It's
all about
setting that
systems.
foundation. Yeah. And it becomes automatic, and everything really is like habitual and automatic, like all of our behaviors. And so if you don't make the effort to like set those things in place, and I guess with the spark, like if you don't have that spark to in the first place, like go out and set those things in place, then it's never going to happen.
I think I think it might be what you were talking about, but maybe slightly different advice that I personally got was in Ramadan that the kind of the drive is to like start doing like tahajjud and really scale up things to a degree that is completely unmanageable. And some of the advice that I've got is that essentially what you should always when you add a habit, you should add a habit that you will be able to continue forever. And that means that you might not take on as much at the start. So for example, if compound growth. It's compounding growth, because listen, so for a lot of us, that's not very aspirational. Like if you're in Ramadan and the only thing that you've added is starting to pray one of your sunnah prayers a day or a few of your sunnah prayers a day, it's not like people are doing like qiyam, layl, people are reading.
You're going to feel like it's not.
You're not feeling like you're doing a lot. And so for it doesn't necessarily appeal for short-term gains. But the idea of it is that if you did that and you did that, say every Ramadan for 10 years time, and you added like something significant like that, imagine what you'd be like in 10 years time. But no one thinks like that, and everyone gets through those 10 years and they probably haven't improved that much generally speaking,
because they've tried too much.
Because what you do is you go all out in Ramadan and then you burn out, and what do you do after Ramadan? You go back to the original kind of 5 times a day, barely waking up for Fajr, etc., etc. So for me, the advice that was given to me, and it was a tradition, like kind of the way that they would do it traditionally was, you do, obviously the basics are the basics, but when you do the fundamentals, build it out one at a time until you have fully solidified, consolidated that one habit. Do not move on. Don't move on. When you've consolidated it, you don't let go of it. Khalas. So it's a bit of different advice, and the idea of it is, as you say, so you might not necessarily be going up at a huge rate. It might not be exponential growth, but you will always be moving up. And if you're not moving up, you're at least keeping those amazing things. That you're still doing your sunnahs. You're still, for example, doing, if you've added duha, or you're starting to read Surah Al-Kahf, for example, every Friday, etc. So that's a piece of advice that I've got. I don't know if you've heard something similar.
No, very similar.
Yeah. So
can I go off onto a very like small tangent? Like,
I would love that.
Earlier, as in you mentioned you're into Stoicism.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a book like Astaghfirullah, because it's got a swear word in the title, but it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving.
So I have heard that book, and I started the book.
Yeah.
And
the beginning is very like, he swears loads, and the author Mark Manson, he explains why he does that. It's because like he wanted to get comfortable with the writing and sort of set the baseline, like the tone, but also that's his way of getting into the swing of just writing the book, because he's a blog.
Unusual.
So I stopped reading the book, right?
Yeah.
And it was mainly because I feel like I got out of it what I needed to get out of it, but also the concept, I felt like it was something that I needed. I needed the concept of where to place that barrier where I can say, I don't care, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was too much on the other side.
Yeah.
Once I understood the concept, I didn't feel the book was providing me techniques to... From what I had read at the beginning point, perhaps I didn't let it get good for it. It was very story-based, which was great.
Yeah.
Learning a lot about how the author got it done. But no, it just didn't end up being a book. I think the books that I like are books that I would recommend others, and I wanted that book because I felt like I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And then I got out of it what I needed very quickly, I think.
So,
but I might be wrong.
I would personally recommend reading the rest of it, and the reason for that is, it's quite a misleading title because the title itself isn't actually that relevant to the rest of the book. The subtitle is a lot more relevant.
To capture the audience.
Yeah, the subtitle of it is A Counterintuitive Guide to Living a Good Life.
Fine.
And it's like, so the first chapter is, how to care less and stuff like that. But every other chapter is about something different.
Oh, really?
And there's loads of different, Stoic teachings. It's things like responsibility. It's things like choosing what to care about. And it's funny because one of the main things that the author preaches in the book is defining values. And that's he builds it up as the hardest thing. And it's funny because as Muslims, we already have that set out for us.
It's
We already
difficult if
know
you don't
what
have
to
an
focus on.
anchorage what your values is. You have to make it yourself. You have to decide yourself.
Why do you want to succeed? Why do you want to
Why do you want to get 1 million subscribers? Why do you want to earn X amount of money a year? Why do you want to work in this industry?
And it's funny because
for us, it's actually easy.
Much. Yeah.
It's been,
and he says that it's the hardest thing to do. And so once you do that, then everything else
easiest
will fall
thing
into
for us
place.
to
It's
do.
already, alhamdulillah, subhanallah, it's already done for us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Guys, you know what? It sucks because I think I've enjoyed this conversation. I would say out of the 237 or 38 conversations we've had, it has to be my top 5. I've really, because this is my kind of conversation. I really enjoy it, and it sucks because I would like to have this conversation for 4 hours, but unfortunately, time has preceded us. Is that good? Is that the correct way of saying? Is that correct saying? Time has preceded us.
I've never heard it before.
I'm not sure.
I've heard it before, but that just evolved with the tongue so well. I hope that made sense.
You can make it.
If it made sense,
Coin the time.
let's break it down. Time has preceded us.
Well, there's this whole thing of
It's come before us.
Well, there's this whole thing of people 50-50, the population split. And let's say if you say that you move a meeting back, does that to you mean that you've moved it earlier or later? Because 50-50, people will see it as earlier or later. There's not actually
it back as in it was meant to be 5 o'clock, now it's 6 o'clock, or as it meant to be 5 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock.
So there is a subset of people who will think that it means it's earlier now. But you just said if it was at 5 and it's 6.
I need to push the meeting back.
Yeah.
For me, that'd be later.
Later.
What would it be for you?
I think it would be later for me as well. Yeah.
I'm intrigued by your fingers, to be honest, with the buttons. To be honest, yeah, you're switching it. I don't know if you're doing it without even realizing. You've become such a pro. You might need to explain what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think people know. I have a switcher here where I switch the cameras live because it's.
Is it cameras?
Yeah, those 2 cameras are being switched.
I thought it was the sound. I thought what it does is mute the other person so it doesn't overlap.
No, that would be really difficult. So the concept behind this is actually a great question because it is kind of productivity focused. So.
Also avoid you having to edit it back and forth.
Exactly. So in the past, I would record an episode. Getting an episode of Fresh Ground out would take about 2 days. So one whole day of recording because we didn't have a dedicated studio. So we'd set a studio up, record in the studio, take the studio down. By that time, you pretty much got a work day done. And then it would take a whole other day to edit it. So you're getting each individual audio, you're getting each individual camera, getting all the SD cards, putting it in, editing it, listening to it, and then coloring it, all that kind of stuff. And so now the system that we have with all of this equipment is, and I'm so grateful for it because when we started, we were doing this off GoPro and then a G7X, which is a vlogging camera. So I really am grateful to Allah. But the equipment that we now have allows us to essentially what we're doing is, even though this isn't live, we're basically live streaming this but to no audience. And so at the end of it, you just get one big video file, all the audio is already
it'll be ready to upload.
It'll be ready to upload.
But how come you have to manually change it? Because you know how Zoom, it will switch the kind of main. Is there not a way for
No, there is a way. There's software and stuff to do exactly that, but it's not. Yeah, it's not the best.
It's probably cut too quickly. I'm guessing.
Yeah, and this allows me to manage, for example, let's say off camera we would Nate brought the equipment in, and I could switch it to me without having to. So it's a bit of
purely by sound, whereas you can have a bit of control.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just very intriguing.
Yeah, because it has become second nature. But the other thing I enjoy about it, because we used to have a producer for every episode, whether it be Nate or whether it be a guy called Red, or we had for 1 or 2 episodes a guy called Tuhin, and having a producer is something that I've toyed with. The advantages and disadvantages of. I think ultimately, long term, I probably would like a full-time producer here. We do have a full-time producer on Current Events, which is one of our shows, but Current Events is a live stream show where it's very, very heavily based on interaction with the audience. You have to have a producer for that, because the producer's dealing with 100 people talking at the same time. There's the guys, there's camera angles, it's live. With Freshly Grounded, mainly this is not live streamed. But here's what the number one you'll also realize that there's no artificial lighting in here, right? Which is weird, considering we're a production setup, right? Like, we should have artificial lighting because the quality of the video would be a lot better, and I'm not against it. I do want some artificial lighting. There's a specific light that I'm really after. It's called the Aperture 300D or the 120D.
Is it one of those ring lights, or just like,
it's one of those like big lights that's like over us, like sunlight,
like a floodlight?
Okay.
Yeah. It makes
You do have a light directly above us, actually.
Yeah, but they're not studio lights. What that does, that light, is it literally makes these cameras look like cinema cameras. And yeah, the lighting affects it, because these cameras are great quality cameras, but by not having natural light, by not having artificial light and stuff, it kind of reduces the quality. However, these things so far, I'd like to think are like 20% decisions based on resources, so like finances to be able to fund those kind of lights, a producer, pay a full-time salary to a producer, so on and so forth. But 80% to do with the environment that I want to create. I want to create an environment in Freshly Grounded for the guest that comes that is incredibly comfortable, where they forget the cameras are there. We already can't forget the mics are here because they're in your face, right? But to forget that the cameras are there, to forget that you're on camera, a massive artificial light would affect that. Having a fourth person in the room who's actually not talking to us would be incredibly weird, and it has been. It's like it's just like walking around adjusting cameras, and it's like it's a bit distracting. So how much of this can I do without needing?
Like the person on board is under the table, like it's not like it's not in front of us, like switch.
Exactly. And I hope that I'm like fairly like fluent with it to the point where it's not incredibly distracting.
No, it's second nature. I can see it. Like you're switching back and forth.
It's just like camera one, camera two.
I'm just so shocked that you're still able to focus on what you're saying whilst you're still like switching cameras back and forth. Like you're doing it whilst you're talking. And so for me, it's just like I'm very bad at multitasking.
I'm horrible at multitasking generally. But
it must have been really difficult at the start.
It was very difficult at the start. It was very difficult. As I was mentioning, I would love to talk to you guys, but time has preceded us. Congratulations on the app. It's a phenomenal app, and I wish you guys all of the success. If you haven't downloaded it, please do download it. It's called Pillars, Pillars. And there's I hear many great things coming with the app, but I also would like to extend the invitation to you guys. Please do come back, and in fact on a regular basis, because I would love to have more of these conversations. I hope that the audience are enjoying them. The conversations that are the productive conversations that move, I think, hopefully the whole community in the right direction, because we're breaking down concepts, we're understanding productivity, we're understanding different books, different thinkers, and I think that's important. And that's a conversation style that I miss having a lot, because often when you have a guest on a podcast, you want to hear their story, and it's interesting. I love hearing people's stories, but I also miss just chopping it up about different concepts. So if you guys are up for it, I know you're very far, Tariq, but
it's cool.
If you're up for it, I'd love to have you guys on a more of a regular basis, just have these kind of conversations.
I'd love to,
especially there's often times where, for example, we might either not have a guest scheduled for that week, or a guest has done last minute cancellation. We're like panicking to find somebody, or sometimes I just don't fancy like a really intense
just a chill conversation.
No, I agree. I think inshallah, like I was actually, funny enough, Twitter Spaces, like it's a bit like Clubhouse, if you know Clubhouse. I was thinking of having the exact same format as a like kind of monthly or something to Spaces, but I think like a platform like this, where like the audience is already very interested in something like this, and you love these conversations. I personally love having these conversations with friends all the time. Me and Tariq have these conversations with each other all the time. It'd be great to have it with you.
Fine, amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, everyone who's listening, and hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more of Tariq and Abdul-Rahman on Freshly Grounded. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.